Trump launched a victory fund for Ukraine. Zelensky warns of threats from Belarus, and Russia risks losing control over 40% of its territory. Here's the top international headlines. But before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, hit the like button and share your thoughts in the comments. US President Donald Trump is working on a victory fund for Ukraine, which would be financed through new tariffs on China, according to The Telegraph. The US President has tasked Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent with presenting this plan to European counterparts ahead of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's visit to Washington on Friday.
President Trump has instructed the ambassador and myself to tell our European allies that we would be in favor of whether you would call it a Russian oil tariff on China or a Ukrainian victory tariff on China. But our Ukrainian or European allies have to be willing to follow. We will respond if our European partners will join us.
The strategy reportedly calls for a massive 500% tariff on imports from China, with the revenue used to purchase weapons for the Ukrainian army. The plan is designed to put maximum economic pressure on Russian President Vladimir Putin, whose military relies on Chinese support in an effort to bring him to the negotiation table. Diplomatic sources in Washington told The Telegraph that the idea of imposing sanctions on China for buying Russian oil has previously faced pushback from the European governments. US President Donald Trump said that Ukraine would like to go on the offensive against Russia. He made the remarks on October 15th during a press conference at the White House.
No, we're looking at other options. We are. President Zelensky is coming in. I'm not a fan of the war. I'm not a fan of the way it started. It should have never happened. It wouldn't have started if I were president. No, we'll be talking about the war with him, and we'll be talking about, they want to go offensive. I'll make a determination on that, but they would like to go offensive, you know that, and we'll have to make a determination.
Trump said he will soon speak with the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky about the war. The meeting is expected on Friday, October 17th. Zelensky has previously stated that he is preparing in detail for the meeting with the US President and consulting with relevant government agencies on the specifics. According to media reports, the possible provision of long-range Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine is expected to be one of the key topics during the Zelensky-Trump meeting. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has warned of a Russian threat in Belarus, likely targeting Europe's borders. He made the remarks following a briefing by Oleg Ivashchenko, head of Ukraine's Foreign Intelligence Service. The general briefed the Ukrainian president on the details of Russia's plan for further military use of Belarusian territory.
Oleg Ivashchenko also reported on the Russian plan for further military exploitation of the territory of Belarus. At this stage, we will not make the information public. We will warn partners who may be threatened by this.
The warnings about the threat from Belarus came after President Alexander Lukashenko ordered the Belarusian army to move to full combat readiness. Zelensky also said that global sanctions are indeed limiting Russia's ability to continue and expand its war against Ukraine. He added that the stronger the sanctions pressure, the sooner reliable security can be guaranteed for both Ukraine and its partners. Russia risks losing control over 40% of its territory due to the expansion by China and North Korea, according to Ukraine's Foreign Intelligence Service.
Russia is increasingly paying its allies in the war against Ukraine with its own territory. Lacking the resources to develop the country's largest region, the Far Eastern Federal District, Moscow is opening the door to external expansion. China is increasing its economic influence, with investments in the region expected to reach 1 trillion rubles in 2025.
Russia is facing a growing challenge in its Far East. Trade with China jumped 5.5 million tons in 2024 and another 36% in the first half of 2025, says Senator Viktor Kalashnikov. At the same time, China is quietly expanding its presence, with up to 2 million Chinese citizens now living from Vladivostok to the Urals. Incentives and visa-free rules are creating enclaves where Russians barely work. Meanwhile, North Korean labor is pouring in. Over the past year, 15,000 workers arrived, with unofficial estimates reaching 50,000. Russian companies have another 153,000 contracts in the pipeline. Workers earn minimal pay, while Pyongyang pockets up to $500 million a year. Intelligence warns two nuclear powers are strengthening their positions on Russian soil. China builds economic control, North Korea supplies cheap labor, both at Russia's expense. If trends continue, Moscow could lose control over 30% of its territory, almost 7 million square kilometers, with nearly 8 million people, turning the Far East into a stage for foreign powers. India will no longer buy Russian oil. US President Donald Trump announced that during a briefing in the Oval Office. Trump said that Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi assured him that New Delhi will stop purchasing Russian oil.
No, we were not happy with him buying oil from Russia, because that lets Russia continue on with this ridiculous war where they've lost 1.5 million people, by the way. Russia's lost 1.5 million people, soldiers mostly. This is a war that should have never started, but it's a war that Russia should have won in the first week, and they're going into the 4th year. And I want to see it stop. So I was not happy that India was buying oil. And he assured me today that they will not be buying oil from Russia. That's a big stop. Now I got to get China to do the same thing.
Trump said that Modi cannot stop buying Russian oil immediately, calling it a bit long process, but assured that it will be completed soon. It's worth noting that at the end of August, the US imposed crushing 50% tariffs on Indian goods introduced by Trump over India's purchase of Russian oil. Meanwhile, Reuters reports that some Indian refineries are preparing to reduce Russian oil imports gradually as the US pressures New Delhi to stop buying Russian oil to help bring the war in Ukraine to the end. At the same time, Indian refineries say the government has not officially informed them to stop buying Russian oil, according to Reuters sources. Sources added that it will be difficult to halt purchases immediately, as a sudden switch to other crude oils could push global oil prices higher and risk fueling inflation. Government data show that from April to September, in the first 6 months of this financial year, India imported 1.75 million barrels of Russian crude oil per day. Its share fell to about 36% of India's total oil imports. This is down from 30% during the same period last year. That's it for now. For the latest news, follow our X account WarrenPolitics24. The link is in the video description.